It's time for 41 is the Mic, a weekly Chiefs podcast with Nick Jacobs of KSHB 41 and Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest. 41 is the Mic starts now.
That's right, everyone. Welcome back. This is 41 is the Mic. I am Matt Derrick from Chiefs Digest alongside organized team practice activity enthusiast Nick Jacobs. Nick from KSHB 41, how in the world are you today?
I'm good. I got to, watch some OTAs yesterday, and look, I'm happy. Okay, I could see football again, even if it's 7-on-7 for the most part type of thing. I got to watch some footballs be thrown by some guy who was wearing number 15.
I have to go back through my notes and look. I believe we saw, if I'm not mistaken, I think 50 plays yesterday between team blitz, 7-on-7, little team pass at the end. So that's some actual football, Nick.
Well, I mean, we could definitely say we saw 50 snaps. I mean, in terms of plays, they were continually working on what they did during their install portion. So,
there were only a couple of our pet peeves of the quarterback scrambling during
not happy. I was not happy. You were standing right next to me during it. I'm like, dude, come on,
both
don't
had
waste
the exact same thought.
Don't waste the rep, man.
You got to test your windows this time of year.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Patrick Mahomes does.
He did on that one interception. He did. So
yeah. You got to find out what you can get away with. And Kelvin Joseph said you can't get away with that, Patrick.
Not against him.
Not against him.
He wasn't as vocal as Trey Dean might have been on some things, but we'll leave that alone right now.
I think we got a lot of notes and observations just talking ball today. So yeah, let's get into it. And I know that the thing that everybody wants to talk about, everything that everybody's most focused on, is how does this passing game look? How do the new receivers look and working with Patrick? And what were your first impressions yesterday, Nick?
So I'm going to start with Rashee Rice, obviously. Look, I mean, from where he was last year to where he was on the football field yesterday, just from a football perspective, like, he's got a ton of confidence. You can tell he's been working in the offseason, just how crisp he is on his cuts, how he sells better than he did last year with the head fakes sometimes, and then just knowing where he's going and understanding where he needs to go to, if he needs to sit down in the spot, if he needs to keep going, like the overall structure of the offense. He's not having to help anybody line up in a spot. Nobody's having to help him line up in a spot. And I don't think that happened very often last year. I'm not going to say it didn't happen, because when you're a rookie, that's completely understandable. But like, you're not having to show him, hey, that you stay in here. Don't have to do that. Like, he's just from where he was last year, completely different football player out there in the field, and just has that level of confidence with him. That's the first thing that stood out to me on that field. And he wasn't tired. He knows what level he has to work at now. Like, it's just from that part, it's been interesting to kind of flash back to where it was last year versus this year, and you're like, yeah, no, he's a whole different player in a positive way. And then Marquise Brown, that guy can track a football. And there was one where Mahomes lofted it up right in front of us, probably 45-yard pass or so. And I'm like, I don't know if Marquise is gonna get that one. I was like, I don't know. I was like, oh no, he just tracked it. He's there. and I mean, just the way Marquise could adjust if he needed to. And then that one-handed grab he made right in front of us when he dove for the football and made the touchdown catch, got everything in that would have been a touchdown on it in terms of shoulder, arm, ball possession, everything combined. Yeah, I mean, Marquise Brown, just watching him get in and out of his breaks, like just seeing that in person, like the quickness, like it stands out versus last year whenever you're looking at the group collectively, to where, Rice looked like one of the better athletic guys out there. And you watch that, and I was like, whoo, okay, all right. So, I mean, obviously, Worthy was off to the side. I mean, with the hamstring issue, so you didn't get to kind of see him collectively work in the system, but he stood right by the receivers the entire time. He was watching everything, and, like, he was asking questions. So, I mean, you could tell he was bummed he wasn't out there. Like, you can see that on some guys' faces, and, like, he wanted to be a part of it, but he was still doing what he could to work mental reps or to be able to kind of ask questions and observe and do stuff like that. So, I mean, I felt like he was completely engaged the entire practice.
Yeah, he absolutely was. I mean, you could tell. I mean, he was out there during the stretch period, hanging out with all the other receivers and the kick returners. Certainly, you're right. I mean, you could tell he wanted to be out there. He did, from what we heard from Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, tweaked his hamstring on Tuesday, so he did get a practice and a half in. And that was kind of the echo of what we heard, is that, like you said, he's asking the right questions. He's showing his intelligence as a receiver. What he's doing on the field, they're saying is thoughtful and well planned. It's understood. He's not lost out there. And, even with Rashee Rice, I mean, looking at him, it's been a while, Nick, since we've seen a rookie receiver come into the Chiefs that has as much college experience at a high level as Xavier Worthy. I mean, if you're a Chiefs fan, you're used to, hey, Sky Moore had plenty of experience, but hey, it was still at a, mid-level Division I level school. I mean, it wasn't at a Power 5. Rashee Rice came in, doesn't have the starting experience in college, didn't have the depth of experience that Xavier Worthy had. So, that to me, I mean, you can, at least this way, we haven't got to see it with the full squad, but we're hearing about what happened on Monday and Tuesday, that he's probably a little bit more advanced than your typical receiver coming into Kansas City's offense.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would rather him be cautious with that. And I think the Chiefs are obviously going to be that, because it's OTAs right now and it's not necessarily a training camp aspect. And they know that they're still going to be able to get him the mental reps and have him in the room and have him see how guys work and kind of soak it all in either way. So they know, again, they're not trying to win the battle. They understand the long-term war that they're going to have the entire season football-wise. So they really don't have to push Worthy to that level.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that I'm really am getting from this, is that, one, there was a couple of moments you're just looking out there and you're saying, okay, hey, here's Hollywood Brown, here's Rashee Rice, Jared Wiley at one point was lined up behind him. I mean, you can kind of vision Travis Kelce in that role too. You can start to see the elements of, hey, yeah, this is going to be a potent offense when you get Worthy out there as well. This can be 4 or 5 group sets of receivers and pass catchers that could absolutely cause some problems. And we saw it yesterday, even then, just that one day.
Yeah, they had some. I'm not going to get in depth on it, but they had some very intriguing formations that I really enjoyed. And I'm like, yeah, that's going to be tough for defenses to account for that. And I said, that's going to be tough for defenses to account for that. And I'm like, that's going to be tough for defenses too. And with that level of speed, once Worthy's back out there, that's going to be really tough. So, I mean, there's things that I saw that I'm like, we can't really necessarily get into, nor do we need to right now. But there are things that I'm like, yeah, that one's going to be lethal. And there's some things that you can tell they've added or they've had in the playbook that they just needed certain skill set wise to be able to kind of utilize. And they were installing it yesterday to kind of work with. And I think for me personally, the thing about OTAs that, you can't personally knock is you're getting a lot of younger guys and new people, new players that are going to be part of your team. You're getting all of them to really kind of experience firsthand the level they're going to have to work at the rest of the year, whether it's in training camp or during the season, and what they kind of expect out of them. They get used to that level of intensity. And Andy Reid does a good job because of the experience that he has and the amount of time he has in the league of just how to keep things not only consistent to where you and I know what to expect and what's required of players there, and those guys on the field get to experience that firsthand, and they already kind of get used to what it's going to be like whenever September rolls around, or even during training camp, at the level of volume they're going to have, how quickly they try to move, and things of that nature. Carson Wentz kind of got to find that out yesterday about how quickly you're going to need to move and be able to say the playbook and things of that nature, just to get through the play clock whenever that happens.
Yeah, and and you mentioned about Hollywood Brown and his tracking ability, and we certainly saw that.
Yeah.
You also saw, to me, like the little things that are developing between him and Patrick. that honestly we're kind of missing last year, in the sense that a key to the deep passing game is that the quarterback and the receiver have to be on the same page as far as their rhythm. And I think last year it was evident, and that was probably just for a degree that, hey, Marquez was probably the one deep threat that they had somewhat faith in, but Marquez was not having the consistency that he once had. You're seeing already that Mahomes and Hollywood are on the same page as far as the speed goes, as far as Mahomes having the timing of knowing how fast Hollywood runs on certain routes, and the pace, the steps. I mean, you're starting to see that. And then you mentioned that one-handed grab in front of us, Nick. I mean, the body control that Hollywood has, that's something we haven't seen since Tyreek. I mean, that this team has been missing that kind of receiver that could make that kind of catch for a couple of seasons now.
Yeah, I mean, with Brown, I'm saying, like, just the way he cuts, the way he sells, the way he is able to kind of do everything that he needs to as a receiver and do all the small, finer points. Like, some of those things, I'm just gonna say now that I was witnessing at OTAs, they weren't showing up on coach's film in Arizona. And what that tells me is, and watching him and how he worked, he is re-energized to be in this type of culture, this type of system, to be able to have Mahomes throwing to him. Like, that's something that you have to just kind of, you can't really bank on it. So, like, me seeing what I saw on coach's film, that's what the experience in Arizona was like, and that's probably part of, like, that's a reflection of what things were like there in Arizona, and just how disengaged he might have been there towards the end of his time there. But then when you see the way he's working to have to reprove himself in Kansas City and kind of really have to put it all together, you're like, okay, all right, well, that's the guy coming out of Oklahoma. That's the guy that, did pretty well there early on in Baltimore. So, like, you just kind of, it's a nice little reminder of, like, the part you can't always factor in is just kind of the environment they're around at that time. And Arizona clearly wasn't an environment that suited Hollywood Brown. Otherwise, that, it works out better there, and the tape's a little bit better. But yeah, the guy I saw running routes yesterday and kind of helping lead drills at certain points and be able to do everything like that. Yeah, that's the guy you invested in. That's the guy you wanted to invest in, and he showed everything there. And, like, I just saw a revitalized wide receiver out there.
And you started the conversation about receivers talking about Rashee Rice, and I echo everything that you said. I mean, he absolutely looked more confident, was moving faster than he would have been a year ago at this time. Seems like absolutely has a full grasp of the offense now, all three positions. I mean, he's someone that you can see the development from year one to year two. The confidence is there, and clearly these quarterbacks have the confidence in him too. Patrick's first pass from during the team period went to Rashee Rice. Later on, Carson Wentz threw him a touchdown pass. I mean, that's both these top two quarterbacks in the rotation obviously have chemistry, obviously have confidence in Rashee right now, and he was moving very, very smoothly out there. I mean, that's what you need to see from a guy right now this time of year, to at least expect that there's going to be a leap from year one to year two, right?
Yeah, and then on the other end of the spectrum, wide receiver wise, we'll talk a little bit about, like, Justin Watson. Justin Watson had a rough day. There was a handful of drops, and, like, for as much as I talked on rookie minicamp about where they kind of having first day jitters and everything, for Watson, yes, it could just be a bad day and everything. So that's why you just hope that doesn't become a pattern each time media is allowed to be out there, type of thing, just because how much they're probably counting on him and they could use him to be effective. But he did almost have that really impressive touchdown catch that you and I were chatting about there, where, I mean, he stretched out that arm and in the red zone work there, and he almost had a heck of a catch there that would have erased pretty much everything else that had happened that day, because of how tough and how much he was going to have to contort his body to get it. He got a hand on the football, but it wasn't able to kind of fully get that in. And part of that's just because when he's getting ready to hit that ground, like, the ability to secure it was going to be tough to begin with.
Interesting what you think about a couple of the other players too. I mean, even we're talking about receivers, but just pass catchers in general. Because obviously Patrick talked a little bit about Jared Wiley, and I got to say, I mean, I think he had one drop. I mean, he's a rookie. There's going to be some mistakes, but he also had a touchdown where he just worked at the back end of the end zone just to be absolutely perfectly. You can see the size of this kid. I mean, I think he's absolutely, to me, faster and a better pass catcher than advertised. What did you see from Wiley yesterday?
So you're going to be stunned that I did this yesterday.
I will not be stunned because nothing stuns me.
Okay.
When it comes to you and football.
So I watched each tight end for a couple series when they were running on air and everything. I was watching how they sold. I was watching how they went about it, and I just wanted to see the difference between each tight end that they had. And the conclusion I came to: Jared Wiley is the second most athletic tight end that they have on that roster, and like behind Kelsey. And we'll see where Kelsey's at whenever Kelsey and him are out there in the field at the same time. But I can already tell you right now, like, I'm comfortable in saying, like, Jared Wiley is the second most athletic tight end. But, like, just what all he encompasses and what he can be. Like, there's so much promise there, not only because of his size, but because of the athletic ability, the way he can already sell some of the double moves that he had to when they were working on that, like, the confidence he has out there. Like, it's, you know, like, yes, there's going to be some drops and everything because he's getting used to where the placement may be from either Mahomes or Wentz or Olajuwon, depending on who he may work with. You know, I'm not naming anyone specifically because, but I mean, he's getting used to each, it takes a minute for younger guys to get used to, okay, so he throws it at this velocity. He likes to place it here. He throws it at this velocity, likes to place it here. Okay. So then that's going to take, that's what OTAs and minicamp are for, is to get them used to that, where they're going to place the ball, what speed it's going to come at. And, and then maybe it ramps up in 11 on 11, maybe 7 on 7 is a little bit different, but that's that learning curve that they're all going through right now. But I can tell you, I mean, because I thought Irv Smith was going to be the second most athletic guy out there. And I mean, he's behind Wiley, but Wiley, knowing where Kelsey's at from over the years and everything, Wiley's right behind Travis Kelce right now. And then the other tight end that actually surprised me, I'm gonna look his name up, was from the new guy that signed Baylor Cup from Texas Tech. That's a guy I'm gonna keep my eye on because the wingspan he's got and some of the catches he made and everything and the athletic ability he's got. I mean, we'll see where he's at blocking wise when the pads come on down the road, but there's a ton of promise there that I saw yesterday that I'm like, okay, worst case you maybe put him on practice squad, but I was like, that's a sneaky good tight end that could maybe be on the roster down the road.
Yeah, Cups popped out to me during the rookie mini camp as well. And you're right. I mean, 6'6", his height does stand out there. Probably just some refinement needs to come along. But I'm with you. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt to me. I mean, right now, even with what he needs to learn, I think Jared Wiley's the second best tight end of this team. Not even just athleticism wise, just the second best tight end. And that's not a knock against Noah Gray or an Irv Smith. No. It's just, kind of the reality of the situation. I mean, Noah Gray is a very competent, backup tight end. And he can do a lot of things for you. Irv Smith, you can absolutely see the athleticism there too. I mean, not as athletic as Wiley, but more athletic, I think, than Noah Gray. He's got a different skill set. But, hey, if the Chiefs want to carry 4 tight ends this year, I mean, they're going to have a fight for it. I mean, that looks like a fairly deep group. So they've got some options there. Looking outside of just even the pass catcher. Well, one more question I did want to ask about the pass catchers. I mean, was there anybody else? And this kind of leads into the next topic of just about who stood out overall in this mini camp. But was there anybody else that jumped off the page at you? I mean, I know, hey, Justin Ross had a nice little catch yesterday. Nico Remigio had a nice little catch along the sideline at the end of practice yesterday, getting a couple of feet down. Was there anybody else in that group you're like, okay, wait a minute, let's see what this guy's got and let's keep an eye on training camp for these guys?
You already named him off. It's going to be Remigio. Like, after he's wearing a new number for people, so he's out there wearing 81. So it takes you a little bit to get used to. But I'm telling you, that guy hit the weight room hard in the offseason because, like,
he's thick.
He hit the weight room hard, and like he understood. When a guy hits the weight room that hard after dealing with what I believe was the broken collarbone or the shoulder issue in that region during preseason, the way he's bulked up tells me that he wants to be able to weather the NFL storm and how you land on the ground, how you do that type of stuff. And I'm telling you, from a lower body perspective, man, like he whatever he did, it gave him some juice. And he's got a little bit of juice on some of those crossing routes that he may have not had last year. And I thought he could be their Albert Wilson last year. So, like, I'm telling you, like, I mean, just from how cleanly he caught the football, like he was another person that where he was last year and where he's at now, I actually, there's a ton of promise there to where if I was ranking the wide receiver room right now, you feel comfortable. Obviously, you feel great with Marquise Brown. You know, Rice. You don't have any worries on the field. Justin Watson, can play every position. You just keep an eye out on if the drops turn into a trend or if it was just a bad day. Then you got Worthy. So now I'm already at 4 guys, and then 5th one that pops out at you is Remigio. Because, I mean, Sky Moore was out there and everything, and, Sky Moore had his ups and downs that he does. But Remigio jumped out as potentially that, depending on if there's injuries or not, as the 4th or 5th receiver already, to me personally. We'll see what happens, but the way that guy is able to work over the middle of the field, the way he's built himself up and bulked himself up to potentially be able to work over the middle in an NFL scheme, like that's something that I will personally be keeping tabs on.
Yeah, every year at this time, during the 90-man roster period, off-season workouts or training camp, to me, there's always 3 tiers of receivers. And you mentioned the top tier. I mean, those are the guys that are 90% likely to make the roster. And then you've got a group that's really on the bubble. Maybe it's 3 or 4 players competing for 1 or 2 spots. And Sky Moore's obviously in there. Kadarius Toney, who did not practice yesterday, is in that consideration. I wasn't sure about Remigio, whether he needs to be at the kind of in the bottom of that group or the top of the next group. But he showed me yesterday he's in that group. I mean, he's in the 2nd tier to be taken seriously. I mean, there's other players, that are in camp can be competing for jobs. Any one of them could jump out and make a case for themselves. But Remigio to me is absolutely looking like he's playing the part and I had the same observation that you did. I mean, his lower body has gone through a transformation. I mean, he's Tyreek thick in the legs and the thighs and the calves that he wasn't. I didn't remember that last year. So I was pretty impressed with that. So speaking of that, let's go to the rest of the group. And I know, both of you and I of the philosophy that we're not going to know a lot about defensive line and offensive line this time of year because it's a passing camp. I mean, we need to wait till the pads come on for those guys. But the rest of the roster, who stood out to you? Who jumped off the page that you're like, hey, wait a minute, this is a good draft pick, or this is somebody to watch? This is somebody who can make this roster?
Obviously, I'm going to mention Jaden Hicks. Just I mean, Jaden Hicks, Chamari Connor, those two, the way that Spagnuolo and Merritt had them working and where they were placing them at, I'm not going to go in depth about it, but they're very versatile players. Hicks is still just kind of learning. He's getting comfortable with the scheme. He's getting comfortable with what his assignment is. He's getting comfortable with having to adjust on the fly about certain parts of it. But he made some plays yesterday. Like, he had a couple deflections. He was in the right position a lot of the time. And I mean, there were a couple plays where, they got the best of him, but that's to be expected when he's a rookie. And, Spagnuolo coaching him up a little bit on it, kind of going over stuff with him. And so there's that part of that. Then Chamari, athletically, Chamari, he obviously, that guy is probably going to be their Swiss Army knife, which is, I said this last year, and I'm going to continue to say this. I know the end result of where L'Jarius Sneed was his contract year, but before his contract year, L'Jarius Sneed was the Swiss Army knife. Like, they could utilize him a ton of different ways, whether it's inside, out, blitzing, run support, whatever they needed to do. He could do it all. And I'm telling you, Chamari Connor is kind of in that same frame. They may not be exactly the same player, but I'm just telling you, like the way that they use Chamari, they have a ton of confidence in him. And obviously getting to see Brian Cook yesterday, not in the team portion, but in other parts whenever he was out there watching him. I watched him quarter turn, see how he did, see if that foot was bothering him or not. And then just kind of how he went about it. He looks like he's comfortable and confident, and there's no issue with what he had happened in that Green Bay game. So that was encouraging for me to see. And for people that don't know, when a guy is coming off injury like that, the Chiefs don't just toss them into the deep end of the pool. So like, you know, like they are mindful of what that player has gone through and build and do a good job and have good programs of building them back up to where they want them to be by the time the season starts. So for me, I'm just telling you right now, like, don't be alarmed by Cook not necessarily, you know, not hearing him making all these splash plays and all this type of stuff. There's a certain thing that they're doing for him, just like with Najee Johnson, you know, that they're doing with Najee as well, to where just seeing him out there on the football field and seeing the way they both moved around, I'm good with, you know, I'm good. I'm encouraged with where they're at. And I'm like, okay, they're, you know, just let them trust the program that they got, but there's no ill effects to what either one were going through showing up there out on the football field. And I'll have one more guy, but I've taken up too much time, and Matt, the floor is yours.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Jaden Hicks, because I thought it was pretty notable when I asked Patrick about his scouting report on the new receivers and the younger guys, and was asking specifically about his pass catchers, and he goes out of his way to talk about Jaden Hicks. And you're right. I mean, he had a couple of pass breakups yesterday. He looks the part. I mean, you know, you can tell he's strong. Yeah, he's physical. This kid can play. I mean, the Chiefs have the luxury of bringing him along slowly because they do have Chamari Connor, because they will have Brian Cook. It looks like, I agree with you, he looked really comfortable, and the Chiefs have a ramp up period. I mean, both he and Najee Johnson are right on course. You know what I was told earlier, you know, even going back to February and March, that the goal for both of those guys was get out on the field during OTAs, maybe just positional drills, but be a full go by training camp. And if that's the case, then both those guys should be in good situations. Hicks definitely stands out. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And Chamari Connor, I mean, you know, he shouldn't necessarily be a jump out player because he played a lot last year. But you're right. I mean, you talk about the chess piece, and I think about the way that Steve Spagnuolo used Kendall Fuller, and the way that, you know, he did use L'Jarius Sneed. I mean, especially before he became the shutdown follow guy. But even then, I mean, just the flexibility of moving people around, and the way that, you know, Trent McDuffie talked about Chamari Connor, and just how much that Chamari works, how smart he is, his ability to pick up all those positions, because those are the hardest positions to play in a Steve Spagnuolo defense. I mean, all of those defensive back spots, any single one of them is complicated, but it's more complicated than any other position on the defense. And the fact that Chamari can play about 4 of them is pretty impressive, because Justin Reed, I think you feel comfortable, can do that too. I mean, Chamari's up there. I mean, as far as, you know, versatility, and to be able to be the nickel, the dime, free, strong. I mean, I think they'd be comfortable playing him anywhere. So that's pretty impressive. That stands out. There was probably a couple of others. I mean, you know, I think Joshua Williams is, you know, showing a little bit more confidence and consistency than he did last year. I'm interested to see that entire group, Nick Jones, you know, Jalen Watson. They're going to need those 2 guys as well. So they're going to need all 3 of those. And I'm also going to be interested in, you know, how, you know, Trent McDuffie, because I asked him also yesterday too, if he wanted to be the guy, the travel guy, if he wants to be the guy going up against the number 1 receiver, and if he was going to go, and if he felt the need to go to Spags and tell him that, you know, he needs to be that guy. And he said he didn't know if he felt the need to it, but he absolutely wants to be that guy. So I'm curious to see if, you know, Spags will do that, if they will have a travel guy, because I mean, McDuffie is their best corner, and it's not close. But I can also see why, given his size, that, you know, maybe they feel like there's some matchups that wouldn't be favorable for him. But that doesn't mean you have to travel with the best every single week. Maybe you match it up a little bit. But, I mean, McDuffie also, to me, shows a lot more confidence than he has shown. And, maybe that's just a matter of L'Jarius leaving and, he feels, more freedom to speak, that he feels like he can be more vocal now because he knows that he has to be a leader in that group.
Yeah. Then the guy that I'll get to secondary wise that I didn't mention, very sneaky good play was Kelvin Joseph.
Yeah.
Like that guy was all over. That guy was all over 7-on-7 and team, and he had a lot of deflections and good position a lot of the times, and he made that interception on Mahomes, and Mahomes was and let's emphasize this right now. This is the time of year where Mahomes is supposed to test everything out because these interceptions don't cost them championships, don't cost them games. It lets him get back into a certain mentality and a certain mindset and a certain rhythm. And for him, that's what he was doing, is he was testing those limits in a good way. And you want him to when it doesn't count against them. Push those boundaries now so you know not to push them during a regular season game when the game's on the line type of thing. But yeah, no, he Joseph, like just that's a guy that I marked down. I'm like, hey, Joseph's a guy that's gonna push for a roster spot. This, like, if he continues to build up off what he did yesterday, he's gonna push for a roster spot. And then I'll be curious down the road when training camp rolls around, can he do stuff on special teams? Because if he can, and if he could potentially, where he's potentially competing in my book is for that, maybe that spot with Deion Bush, to where can he be a special teams guy and a really good coverage guy, or is that going to potentially be Deion Bush? Because Deion Bush typically goes on practice squad, as one of the veterans, and then they kind of call up when they need to and let him kind of stay in shape till the back end of the season where they need a veteran of his caliber to be able to kind of help them out. And he came up big in the Baltimore Ravens AFC Championship game. So there are moments where having a veteran kind of on practice squad who's a good special teams performer of that nature can help you out when it matters. So Joseph is a very, very intriguing guy in the secondary for me.
And I'll distance you from this a little bit, Nick, so you can feel free to. I'm just going to give everybody a little bit of an OTA hack because the Chiefs, hey, they have their rules. And we've alluded to them before. We alluded to them earlier in the show. Chiefs have their rules about reporting rules when practices are closed to the public, about what the media can and can't say. So one of the things we are restricted in talking about is depth charts, things of that nature, rotations, personnel, substitutions, things of that nature. My only NFL life hack that I will give that is a safe one to say is that if you hear about players being on the field with the other players, you can make your conclusions. So when, Kelvin Joseph intercepts Patrick Mahomes, that might tell you a little something about where the Chiefs are viewing him in the rotation. And that's all I can say. I mean, I'm not telling you anything. I'm just giving you a life hack about when you hear names associated with names during this time of year, you can draw your own conclusions. Your mileage may vary, Nick.
I was waiting for that.
I knew you were. I was
waiting for that part of it, man.
You were
absolutely. I hope you know that's going to be on a T-shirt someday for you.
Gosh, I hope so. That would be awesome.
Well, we put it out in the universe, man. It'll happen now.
Anybody else? I mean, that stood out to you, especially yesterday? I thought that, even though not necessarily a ton of highlight plays or anything, and I don't mean this as a knock against my Mizzou guy, Blaine Gabbert, but Carson Wentz looked really comfortable and really good to me yesterday.
I'm going to go with a handful of positives and one negative.
Go for it.
But it's first day of OTAs that we're observing and kind of the first week of it in general.
And his third practice, basically.
Right,
yeah.
Right. So right now, he's still learning the playbook. He's still learning the verbiage. He's still trying to get that out in the huddle. And that's nothing like, that's not a knock in any way, shape, or form. Like, that's going to take some time to be able to get comfortable with that. He hadn't been in the scheme. If he'd been in the scheme for 3 or 4 years, I'd be like, yeah, man, that's kind of something we gotta get figured out. But like, that's like practice number 2 or 3 of doing that. So that's why you don't worry about that right now. But for him, he sees the field better than Blaine did. He sees the field a lot better than Blaine did. He understands where they're attempting to go, what they're attempting to do, what they're trying. He understands the reads a lot better and where you kind of need to alter them depending on where the coverage look is at based on that. So with what they're working with him, they're giving him good looks early right now to be able to feel comfortable and confident in this offense and kind of help him solve that puzzle as quickly as possible while he integrates himself in the system. For the most part, he places the ball in a lot better positions. He doesn't necessarily put it up high to where he's going to leave somebody out to dry over the middle. So there's that positive in that front. He was a little high on passes a couple of times, but in my opinion, a lot of that has to deal with the fact that he's still getting comfortable and used to who he's throwing to right now. So in terms of those things, like he may have intended for it to be here or there, but because he hasn't worked with that tight end, that receiver, that running back before, that he's still trying to gauge all that so he knows where to they're going to be here at this spot, so I need to aim here to place this in front a little bit quicker in the future. So like he's still going through those growing pains right now, which is going to be for any quarterback, no matter, unless they've been stuck in the same system with the same guys for 5 to 6 years. So Mahomes is going to have a better command, better confidence of that overall, especially with his throwing sessions down there, versus Wentz that really is just kind of getting up to speed in that environment of how to approach that. So, but I'm telling you, he doesn't throw it as high as Gabbert routinely did. He's overall a more refined quarterback that didn't seem overwhelmed by the moment or situation.
Yeah, and I wish I could remember the throw yesterday, because when we were standing next to each other, I mean, I remember the one time I turned to you and after a Wentz throw and just said, Blaine couldn't have made that throw last year. And, I mean, you can see it. I mean, and I think it absolutely helps that, hey, Carson has a lot of experience in the Doug Peterson system, which is a carbon copy of Andy Reid. I mean, so there's going to be a lot of similarities. And Blaine played a lot of West Coast offense, but he never played in an Andy Reid system. So it was a new experience for him. Carson's younger, too. So I think you absolutely could see that a little bit difference. There's maybe a little bit less mileage on Carson's body than there was on Blaine. So, but I mean, so far, I mean, that looks like a really smart move. I mean, as far as if the Chiefs had to play a few games with Carson Wentz, I'd be very comfortable if I'm a Chiefs fan with that situation.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it.
And even my underdog, Chris Oladokun, I thought had a couple of really nice throws. He had a really sweet back shoulder throw to Jaron Hayek that was just absolutely perfectly placed. So, I'm always rooting for my third string quarterbacks, Nick. So
clearly. So, but now the one you're talking about was Wentz. I think it was one of those boundary throws.
Yeah, it was.
He had to really put it in a spot where he's gonna. Because here's the thing that I gauge on a boundary throw for people that are kind of wondering, where do they place the ball so the receiver has one, they keep it away from the defender, but two, they give the receiver a chance to not have to overwhelmingly contort their body to put them out of position to be able to toe tap or be able to get a knee down or do what they need to be able to catch that in bounds and doesn't take their momentum all the way out of bounds as it would with another receiver getting a deep pass later in the day. And that wasn't a Wentz throw. That was a throw by a different quarterback. But that's the key to, like, Gabbert would have sailed that one. Like, it's not, that's just where he's at in his ability to throw. But Wentz was able to thread that needle so that receiver had every opportunity to be able to toe tap, secure the ball, and get everything in that a ref would need, and had enough room to do that. So that was good practice for both of them in that regard. But yeah, no, I think that's the one you're talking about on that.
That was indeed the one that I was talking about. Hey, these workouts, Nick, are voluntary.
Yep.
So Andy Reid wasn't really interested in getting into any injuries yesterday. I mean, he did at least, mention about the Xavier Worthy one, but that was notable. He wasn't really interested in getting into everybody else, but I mean, most of the situations are explainable. We saw Charles Omenihu and Derrick Nottie come out midway through practice. Omenihu's obviously coming back from the ACL. He's going to be a longer term project. deep into training camp, maybe early in the season before you see him get back to practice. Derrick had the tricep injury at the end of the season, so he's still nursing that back. Both of those are understandable and explainable. Chris Jones not there, but Chris obviously has frequently, stayed in Miami. We'll see if he's there for the mandatory mini camp and next month. There's nothing scary about that. She's put out some photos that show that Travis was there on Monday. Still a lot of players, just because they are not there for a practice that the media is available for. Since remember, we're only there for 1 out of 3 of these OTAs. We don't know what goes on in the other 2 or 3 practices each week. So who knows? Clyde, Kadarius Toney were not there. I didn't see Isaiah Buggs. Don't know if there's an injury related there, but he's out. It was another player that I didn't see on the field. Joe Thuney, obviously, is coming back from the pectoral injury. We were not expecting to see him at any point during the offseason. It's going to be training camp for him. So, pretty close to a full house, Nick. It's not a huge number of players, and we'll see if we get some explanations for the guys that weren't there. Maybe they'll be there next week when we're out there on the field. I think it's next Thursday. So, any comments that you have, thoughts about some of the guys who weren't there yesterday that we saw or did not see, as the case may be?
My thing is, I really don't read a lot into most of them. I don't, because it's voluntary. Now, if it's mandatory mini camp, that's a whole different ball game where I'm like, why is that person not here? That's mandatory. So that's why I don't necessarily read too much into, Chris Jones not being there. I'm not worried about it. He got a new contract. What he's done's worked the past 2 to 3 years, and he's also at a stage in his career where you don't want to have the wear and tear. Yes, would you like him to be out there, maybe helping coach some of the guys up? Sure, but whatever rests his body, that's kind of the key for what you're trying to three-peat. Travis Kelce, rest your body. Chris Jones, rest your body. Anything you can do to kind of get rid of that wear and tear. That's a good thing, especially for guys that are pillars of their success, like they are with Patrick Mahomes. You just don't want to overwork them when other guys need those reps to begin with. Because with Travis Kelce not being there yesterday, guess what? 2 of those guys I mentioned, Wiley and Kupp, those guys got opportunities. They got reps wise that maybe they don't get as many if Travis Kelce's out there working. So that's why I don't get upset about any of that type of stuff. Now, a guy I would have liked to have seen out there would have been Kadarius Toney. That would have been one that ideally you probably need to be out there because there's a lot of work ahead of you to be able to make that roster. But, we don't know the details. We don't know what all's going on. So we'll see what happens in the next handful of weeks and then kind of reevaluate from there.
Yeah. With comparison, it can be anything. It can be personal, can be injury. Guys have missed because kids have a dental appointment. They got nobody else to take the kid to the dentist. So you never know. So, and it is voluntary. So I advise everybody, don't jump into conclusions, don't take into considerations, but I co-sign. I do have, a little general loose rule that, hey, if you're over 30, you're a starter, you've been through this, and the team's not going through any coaching changes or anything of that nature. And yeah, you're Chris Jones. Chris Jones missed training camp last year, and it didn't really affect him. So he knows what he's doing. He's taking care of himself. Travis has been through this. He doesn't need the mileage. So yeah, there's nothing to me that would bother me or any concerns whatsoever. The last thing I want to talk about, Nick, I don't think we talked about this a huge amount beforehand, but I am all over the new kickoff rule. Because every time that I see these kickoffs now, Nick, I'm like, this is going to be an exciting play. This is you no longer spend the kickoff grabbing some chips, grabbing a drink. You don't go to the bathroom with the kickoff. The kickoff might be the most exciting play of every drive.
Yeah, it honestly, I'm not kidding. This is what, our second time seeing it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw it during rookie minicamp, but this is the first time with the Stars. So
yeah. And it'll be even more interesting when they can actually have shoulder pads on and hit and block and everything. They can't do that part of that right now. But yes, just seeing the returner go in motion and it's kind of I don't know, it's just a little jarring a little bit. And I'm not giving anything away, but they have to judge the ball and be able to get up to it to field it. So, I mean, just kind of seeing that part of that and then what Tobe does off that, it's very, very interesting, very intriguing. But yes, no, you're 100% right. It now will turn in the kickoff returns are now going to turn into explosive plays because I'm telling you, if you block that first wave correctly, there is nothing except a kicker behind it. And that's deliberately been set up that way to create it for that. So if you've got a special teams coach and coordinator that understands how to get you the wall immediately or get you the crease to run through that, I'm just telling you, somebody like Tyreek Hill during his rookie year or before he became a full-time wide receiver in the league, Tyreek may have broken the kick return touchdown record. And I'm not kidding you on that. Somebody like Niall Davis, when he was here, how good of a returner he was at his size, he may have easily had 8 to 10 of those just based off what it's looking like right now. So I'm just telling you, I agree with you 100%. Like, I'm telling you, that kick return, and don't get me wrong, it'll be exciting for a while. Then teams will figure something out. Teams will do something a little bit differently to where maybe not everybody, comes downhill and collides. Maybe some people drop back to where the wall may be. Maybe each one has their zone down the road here. And that's going to be the back and forth chess match that's going to become with kick return and make that just as big of a strategy as some of the stuff Andy Reid's going to draw up. So I'm saying this is where special teams coordinators are really going to earn their money, good or, and technically some of
them
them
lose their jobs,
might lose their money. But yeah, no, this is one of the bigger things I think has happened in special teams. So in terms of trying to create that jolt. And then the question I have down the road, okay, if this happens on a kick return, do they do anything to punt return down the road from this? If this becomes so exciting, do they do anything different on punt return down the road because of how exciting this may have made kick return?
And I mean, I've got a question. I mean, and we'll see. I mean, because you're right. I mean, we really don't know. We have some experience from some of the minor league football experiments about how this might work, but you also never know how it's going to work with players at the next level, with the next level speed. So you never know. I mean, if this turns out that, if one team has 8 touchdown returns, are they going to want to tone it back a little bit? Probably. I mean, this might be a work in progress, and it could totally backfire this year. I mean, there may be a team that just becomes a juggernaut because they're so good on special teams and on kick returns. But I mean, it definitely looks different in the sense that, since no one can move until the ball is touched, until the ball either hits the ground or it's touched by the returner. I mean, it's then you've got that moment of excitement, but you also, there's no upside to, hang time. There's nothing about an advantage to that. If anything, now the advantage is about trying to create unpredictability. I mean, and that's the one thing that, I think we can consistently see that maybe the Chiefs are trying to experiment with is how do you make the other team uncomfortable? How do you make the receiving team especially uncomfortable getting that ball and doing something with it? And at least the one thing Andy Reid did talk about that we can, a little bit discuss is that Harrison Butker and Justin Reid alternated taking kicks on this thing yesterday. And, and I asked Andy Reid specifically about the advantage of having a Justin Reid as your kicker, because now you got an 11th tackler. And he said, yeah, potentially, because as you said, Nick, I mean, once a guy gets by that line, that one line of defense, there's nobody but the kicker to beat. And if you're talking about beating Justin Reid or Harrison Butker, I mean, you'd rather have Justin Reid on the back end, wouldn't you?
Depending how you approach it, yes. That would be helpful, but at the same time, that's where I think some of the other teams down the road are going to start dropping guys back to have different levels and different waves. And really, hey, maybe these guys in the middle, you take the left angle over here, take that away. You guys are going to take the right angle. So then now we're going to funnel the returner to a specific spot we want, but we have certain people drop back to be the safety valves at different levels. So that's what I'm saying. That's where that's going to be the intriguing part, is how do people counter that? Because initially, you and I both know there's going to be some special teams coordinators out there that aren't going to put in the dedication that Dave Toub and Andy Reid are going to into practices, and are going to find out in this first couple of games, boy, we probably should have spent more time on this. So, I mean, like that opening game with John Harbaugh is a former special teams coach. He's going to give it the proper amount of time. But there are some other teams I don't think are going to give that proper amount of time to special teams, and they're not going to think through some of those scenarios and situations, and they're going to pay for it pretty quick.
Yes, they will, and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be exciting. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm telling you, if you get a chance to go up to training camp, that's going to be the session to watch. I can't wait to see those, and we'll see how it works in preseason games. I mean, teams might play a little bit more differently in the preseason because they don't want to give away their tricks yet, but it's going to be an exciting play. Nick, any final thoughts from OTA practice number 3 for the Chiefs, number 1 for us in the books?
Yeah, the first thing I'll mention is Creed Humphrey snaps. Right on the money.
See any balls on the ground, did you?
Right on the money. They were right up there at Mahomes' kind of chest area where you're kind of hoping they're at, and then chest stomach area. Got him right to him there. So Mahomes was able to drop back and be able to do what he needed to. So on that front, there's that. Running back wise, I'll bring it up. Reese Zammit, very natural catching the ball out of the flats.
Yeah.
Very natural catching it, very comfortable catching it. I know it still feels like rugby for him when he does that. So I'm saying like a third of the battle you've already got him comfortable with in terms of pass catching. The question will be when pads come on, how does he run? And how does he take the hits when he runs? And then pass protection, which you won't really know till training camp. So I'm saying there's at least 1/3 of his game that he looks natural at. It doesn't look like it's effort for him. So I think that's promise on that front. Pacheco, I like we didn't get to see him last OTAs out there. But I will say you can tell a difference when Pacheco's on the field and some of the other running backs. Like you just see a different level of ability and intensity with what Pacheco does. And then when Bailey comes out there, I like what I see from Bailey, the running back they signed out of TCU. There's some promise there as well in terms of what he could potentially be in the scheme in this system. He's a guy that I'm going to be keeping tabs on in the weeks ahead. And obviously during training camp in terms of just what he did in open space, run-wise, how comfortable he looked out there, how comfortable he looked when he did get the ball placed in the proper spot, all that. Like those are kind of the final thoughts I think I have intriguing-wise. I think I've gotten through everything.
Well, we've got more to come. Because after the Memorial Day holiday, Chiefs will be back. They get back on the practice field next Tuesday. They've got practices Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Thursday will be the practice that is open to the media. So we'll be back next week with thoughts and observations from then. Anything you're going to be having an eye on next week that you're interested in particular in seeing, Nick?
I want to continue to see more of the holders for Harrison Butker. That is something that is something that I think
it is interesting.
I want to gauge down the road. It's not something right now that I want to put out in the universe yet, but it's something I'm going to keep marked down and kind of keep remembering and kind of keep tabs on for down the road.
I mean, just go back. I mean, we were telling you during the rookie minicamp that the punter job is not guaranteed. This thing is not closed. It is a wide open competition between the two punters that they've got in camp. So just because one guy's got a name does not mean he's going to win that job. This is going to be a camp battle for sure. It might be one of the tougher camp battles we see, Nick.
Yeah, I know that sounds weird to say, but that is going to be one of the top camp battles. And a lot of that I think is going to depend on how they hold the football for field goals.
And I tell you what, I mean, everything that I have seen out of, and I kind of need to figure out for sure how to pronounce his last name. I think it's Ryan Reckow, but I could be wrong. But the kid from BYU, he can kick. Mm-hmm. There is no doubt about that. So that's going to be a very, very interesting competition. So
that'll be one, and then obviously I'll keep tabs on Creed snapping. But I'm not terribly worried about it. I just wanted he looked back to who he was. So for people that are worrying about that and thinking they need to move him to guard in my mentions and everything, he's fine.
It's almost like when you're back to 100% healthy that, everything works like clockwork sometimes.
It's weird, dude. It's weird how that works.
It's weird things. How the human body works.
So, but yeah, no, the only thing I say is like we're with OTAs going on and everything, Matt and I may upload these a little bit quicker and not have to make you wait on the weekend so you can get these thoughts and kind of have the whole weekend if you need to kind of listen to some of these and kind of get those out there a little on that front. And then we'll go back to our normal routine Sunday when there's not true football action going on that you need to hear as quickly as possible.
There you go.
Plus, I'm also going to forget if I wait till a Sunday morning to do that show.
I was just very thankful that you remembered that, it was Memorial Day weekend and that, hey, you know what? People might enjoy having the episode a little earlier.
Yeah, so, yeah. People are going to...
Kudos to the long-term vision, Nick. I appreciate that.
I try my best, Matt. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
So we will see you all, I guess, next most likely time you will see us will be Tuesday night. I don't know if Nick's going to be available, but he's nodding. So
I will for you.
We will be here for the Q&A on Tuesday night. So if you got anything, come over to the Chiefs Digest YouTube channel and you can join us live 7 o'clock Tuesday night. And then you'll get us back in your feed after the OTA. I guess with our schedules, probably won't be until Friday, but we will get you out. The next episode of 41 is the mic, and we will see you then. Thank you, everyone, as always.
And until next time, I bid you adieu.
You've been listening to 41 is the mic, presented by KSHB 41, your home of the Chiefs and Chiefs Digest.